You've had 1,000 lives, now you're down to one, trying to survive in the shadowverse. Every borderland, every hungry wound, now to make you stand in the shadowverse. You've had 1,000 lives, now you're down to one, trying to survive in the shadowverse. Every borderland, every hungry wound, now to make you stand in the shadowverse. Out of time and fading. Out of time. Empty hearts waiting.
We're starting off with some of our usual statistics. In 2025, I watched 751 matches and rated those for my annual spreadsheet. Of those 751, 319 ended up on my recommended matches list. 751 is pretty significantly the lowest number that I've put in for a annual review, basically all decade long. I'm not sure if it's more or less than what I put in 2020. In the peak productivity years that I was doing this decade, I was watching about 100 matches per month from that particular year, mind you, on top of historical review. This coming in at 751 represents the most disconnected I've felt from pro wrestling basically all decade long. It's not all on pro wrestling that I feel that way. I want to make it incredibly clear that a lot of different factors have led to me watching less wrestling and feeling maybe a little less enthusiastic about it than I usually am. Primarily, lots of factors in my personal life, my investment into different creative fields and outlets has led to me pouring a lot more energy into other pursuits as opposed to my typical criticism and analysis of pro wrestling. But some of that is also on shifting product trends, changes in the industry in general. But this year, I feel far less equipped to speak on those than in years prior. Things stay bad. Just in general, things are rough out there in the wrestling world, especially for a fan like me. And I've found that most of my enjoyment with pro wrestling recently has stemmed from revisiting historical footage. But there's also the awful news things like WWE buying out AAA as one of the most devastating developments of 2025. Brock Lesnar coming back and making a public return to the WWE, representing TKO's continued push against Janelle Grant and her lawsuit against the company. And that's not even getting into all the different creative choices that leave me feeling so-so about weekly pro wrestling in 2025. That said, we still came out of it with a lot of great wrestling. The scope of it might be a little more limited than I would have liked from myself, but we're still here to celebrate what we can. Without further ado, I guess we'll just hop into some of the biggest categories. I will start us off with the most obvious category winner of the year, as I do believe it'll provide a little more context for the picks that will come out later on. So, we might as well get the obvious out of the way right here, right now. Promotion of the year: Deadlock Pro Wrestling. The only promotion that I followed religiously in 2025 was DPW. And by that, I mean the second every single show was within my hands, I switched it on and I watched it front to back. DPW basically made good on their promise this year of becoming the super indie that they had always shown the potential to be. That said, it's not without its flaws, alright? While I do believe that DPW had its strongest year ever in 2025. It's not a perfect year for the company, and you couldn't even say it's a perfect year for any company when they win Promotion of the Year. I do believe that the first quarter of DPW's year was especially weak, even given the momentum that they were building in the year beforehand. The January, February, and March shows were really not that great, and that's even before Jake Something was injured and was forced to vacate the DPW World's Championship and force the booking to sort of warp around that. Those first few shows at the start of the year were not especially great, but there were a lot of great highlights all throughout. DPW in the first quarter of the year is sort of similar to how I imagine AEW is on average. You would still get something pretty great or just really good throughout, but the top of the card suffered. That said, once Adam Priest won the World's Championship in Las Vegas, it was full steam ahead for DPW as quite simply the best promotion in the world. Every single show was top to bottom incredibly strong, and it was all anchored on a World Championship run centered on one of the best heels anywhere in pro wrestling. Adam Priest's world title run featured so many great title defenses, and we will talk about his performances in that a little later on in today's video. But there was so much great about DPW outside of just the world title scene, and that's why they land in Promotion of the Year. Their overall booking and development of their cards made it just impossible to look away from show to show. A lot of this is just focusing on the right talent. DPW in 2025 might be one of the greatest examples of addition by subtraction that we've seen in this decade's pro wrestling. Gone were some of the lesser acts that I didn't care for from 2024. Take, for example, the more spotty Mike Bailey matches, even as fun as Speedball Something Once as a tag team, less focus on imports or wrestlers such as Titus Alexander or Kevin Blackwood, who I have mixed feelings about, but sometimes have good matches on the shows, and a lot more focus on young names like Manny Lowe, who turned into a really interesting and fun heel towards the end of the year, and of course the fantastic championship booking that they had throughout the year. I do believe that DPW's weakest point throughout the year was their tag team division, as Grizzled Young Vets versus Violence is Forever was a fun start to the tag team division's year. Miracle Generation, while cathartic in their victory, not the strongest selection, but we did get the Bo Dash brief reign at the end of the year, and I do think that's nice. And under Adam Priest, of course, we have LeBron Cozone having a wonderful national championship reign. And despite Priest spending much of the year as the top champion in the company, it was LeBron Cozone who basically singled himself out as the ace of the company. Stylistically, DPW reminds us of modernized ROH in its aesthetic, tightly edited show presentation, and it brings us that hybrid style that we associate so much with 2000 Super Indies, and that's why it was always going to be real close and dear to my heart. It is a mix of that 2000s indie style, pace, and energy, and just a real strong helping of classic, old-school pro wrestling, especially in the American style. DPW was so good. I'm so bummed that they went away, but we will be talking about them a little bit more throughout the show. Honorable mentions include CMLL. I do believe that CMLL had a real chance at winning Promotion of the Year this year, but I personally neglected them. That's on me, not them. But the moves towards homogenization and the added influence of the American market represent some distressing trends from CMLL, especially as we move into 2026. We're already 3 months into the new year, and there are some distressing trends there. We'll see how that develops in the years to come. SGW is flawed, but so fun. Just incredibly watchable, and at its best, you see a wildness and understanding of genuine pro wrestling brilliance. And while it is a mixed product as a whole, it's just impossible not to enjoy what they're putting out there in the world. And this year, I'll shout them out, AEW, all right? Again, not a perfect year from AEW. We still have a sprinkling of defeat from the jaws of victory, as always, from that company, but I enjoyed their TV more than I didn't, and the high-level stuff remains as excellent as always. That's Promotion of the Year. Let's move on now to the next category, which is Event of the Year. DPW Super Battle. I was spoiled for choice as far as event of the year went, specifically from DPW. A lot of people were making predictions about which of the DPW shows would end up taking this category, both on Twitter, in the chat, and on Blue Sky. It was close between Super Battle, Beast Coast, and 4th Anniversary. Those were the top 3 choices, and of course those other 2 fall into my honorable mentions. Allow me to explain why I chose DPW Super Battle. In 2024, I chose a DPW show over Action Wrestling's Dean, which was maybe a somewhat unpredictable or maybe a little controversial choice, and the choice for going with Super Battle is the same. Super Battle represents DPW operating at the peak of their powers, reaping what they had sown throughout the year. DPW shows us how they pay off their promises via Super Battle. It's the end of Adam Priest's reign of terror over the company, the crowning of Jake Something once again as the champion who never lost his title, and you even get the wrapping up of things like Nicole Matthews's Women's World Championship reign here against Queen Aminata. And there's a certain catharsis as well to Queen Aminata winning a title outside of AEW. And if you just look at the card, DPW Super Battle is a fantastic show, top to bottom. The trios opener is excellent. Manny Lowe gets a really fun showcase once again against Leon Slater. And the back-to-back great heavyweight bouts between LeBron Cozone and Calvin Tankman, and then Eric Stevens versus Roderick Strong is just excellent stuff. Super Battle as well is when DPW still had a future in their sights, and you see the pieces that they're trying to put in place ostensibly for a new year. Of course, we didn't see a lot of those come to fruition, but you had the continued drama and chaos around the women's title. Things like what Jake Something might do moving forward as a champion, and even LeBron Cozone's continued rise as the ace of the company. DPW Super Battle is the result of a year of excellent booking and hard work and great performances from everybody, and it's really the show in DPW's year where you got to sit back and just enjoy what they had worked so hard for. You could very much say the same for the 4th Anniversary show, their last show in the US, but I think that is bolstered a little bit too easily by the fact that it is the last. You get to go a little more all out when you know that there's nothing standing in front of you afterwards. DPW Super Battle, meanwhile, is the machine working as it's meant to, and that is what DPW has always excelled at, and why I think it is the event of the year. Honorable mentions go to Beast Coast and the 4th Anniversary show, and Victory Lap from DPW. Again, spoiled for choice. Really, really great year of really fantastic events from DPW. And outside of that, we have Fighting Detectives 3, Sendai Girls Mateiko Satomura The Final, and the Valentine's Day edition of CMLL's Viernes Espectacular in Arena, Mexico. Moving on to a category which I had the most difficulty with, and will probably have the choice that most people will be a little iffy about. So let's go. Tag Team of the Year. The Death Riders. If we're being honest, it's probably a CMLL tag team. It's likely El Sky Team, it's likely Los Guerreros Laguneros, it might even be Galeon Fantasma. Here's the problem. I didn't watch enough CMLL to, in good faith, make those cases for them. I basically blanked out on CMLL in the middle of the year and towards the end. And so I have to go with the honest and true choice for myself, and that is my beloved Death Riders. I have been on their side since they formed, since they were the Blackpool Combat Club, and I actually think that they've been bubbling up in this category throughout the decade, even before the major Jon Moxley heel turn. But if we're looking at that year, I think there's a strong case for it. Week to week throughout the year, the Death Riders are putting in great tag team matches in various combinations, whether that be 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3, 4 versus 4, and all the while anchored by an excellent lineup in Jon Moxley, Wheeler Yuta, Claudio Castagnoli, Pac, and then towards the end of the year, Daniel Garcia. They're great. I don't know what else to tell you. It is not nothing that one of the turning points for AEW's year was the Death Riders losing their trios championships to the Ops. And the build-up tag teams to basically all of the Jon Moxley title defenses were incredibly strong throughout the entire year. Even earlier in the year, one match of theirs that I don't think gets talked about enough is the street fight against FTR. The Death Riders have great matches all over and in varying different styles as well. You have the big gimmick matches such as Anarchy in the Arena or Blood and Guts. I'm not especially high on those, but then you have things like having a great main event in Arena Mexico against AEW's collected superstar babyfaces at the time, or even the Michinoku Pro-esque mixed tag team matches we got at the end of the year that featured Tony Storm and the Conglomeration. Basically, the Death Riders made AEW TV must-watch appointment viewing for me, and another thing that you can add to their resume is that via Death Riders tag team matches, we have Gabe Kidd's best work of the year. My apologies to the Kenny Omega singles matches. I will take Gabe Kidd slotted in as Death Rider number 5 any day of the week. The Death Riders are the tag team of the year. Honorable mentions go out, as I mentioned earlier, to El Sky Team and Los Guerreros Laguneros, even Galeon Fantasma. But as far as consistent week-to-week tag team matches that I love, it has to go to my beloved Death Riders. And with that, we move into the first of the major awards of the night. The top 20 matches of the year. Honorable mentions in chronological order include Demus versus Adam Del Castillo from Lucha Memes, January 19th, 2025. Demus versus El Hijo del Fishman from Zona 23, March 9th. Meiko Saramura versus Chihiro Hashimoto from Sendai Girls, March 19th. Adam Priest versus Jake Something inside a steel cage from DPW's Super Battle. And Samoa Joe versus Eddie Kingston for the AEW World's Championship from AEW Dynamite. Winter is coming. And now on to the list proper. Number 20 is Anoa versus Sanjuki from SGW Amazon, January 4th, 2025. SGW is most famous for their wild and reckless action that happens on pure soft ground out there in Uganda, and in the midst of all the wildness and craziness, we got an honest-to-God great championship-style match. Anoa, my boy, my beloved, takes on possibly the best wrestler in the company, Sanjuki, and what gets produced is a shockingly thoughtful and snug championship bout. Sanjuki attacks Anoa's arm here like an absolute demon, and to my genuine shock, as it is not one of the typical style markers of SGW, Anoa puts in a great arm-selling performance. It halts him, it prevents him from nailing some of his finishers towards the finishing stretch, and in the meanwhile, all the smaller moments are filled with the usual hard strikes and brutality that I love from SGW, but this time matched with a structure that is sound and just tickles my brain in the nerdiest way that I like, and that makes it the best bell-to-bell match from SGW in 2025. Number 19 is the Hollywood ending, Tony Storm versus Mariah May from AEW, March 9th, 2025. Of course, it's the big Hollywood ending, much talked about, much beloved throughout the year, and for good reason. It is bloody, it is violent, it is gruesome in the ways that AEW only ever seems to present as far as mainstream American television goes. There is so much in here that there is to love, from Tony Storm stabbing Mariah May's face with the shoe, basically paying off that particular element of their feud, to Tony Storm, again, resurrecting the Type A deathmatch, dipping her taped fist into broken glass and punching her way through Mariah May's face. It is bloody, it is tight, and it is a cathartic end to a feud that I personally had very mixed feelings about. So seeing them end on such a high was really rewarding, and for me personally at least, was the major turnaround for the timeless Tony Storm character, and basically turns her into the ace of the women's division and one of the hottest acts in AEW to follow from then on. Number 18 is Shinya Aoki versus Kaigo Nakamura from DDT February 14th. Shinya Aoki puts Kaigo Nakamura through the absolute ringer in this match. All Aoki wants to do is to get your shoulders to the mat and twist you up into knots, and for the first time, he finds a younger opponent who doesn't feel out of his depth wrestling in that style. Granted, Aoki still lays an absolute beating on Nakamura throughout this entire match and is basically twisting him up, but the way that Nakamura is able to swim in this sink or swim scenario is wildly impressive. He is hitting Aoki just as hard, if not harder. His kicks remain fantastic as always, and towards the finishing stretch, you can't help but actually believe in Kaigo Nakamura and think that maybe he can pull it off. Aoki doesn't quite drown in it, but for a second, it looks like Kaigo is the one dragging him into deeper waters than usual. This is basically the Shinya Aoki special, but it is perhaps one of the more interesting stylistic clashes that he had in 2025. There are a few more we'll get to in just a little bit, but this was easily one of his best of the year. Number 17 is Darby Allin versus Pac. One of the better singles matches from Darby Allin's continued crusade against the Death Riders. This has all the wonderful features of Darby Death that we're used to, including disgusting, gross bumps to the floor, off the apron, off the top, but also all the finer qualities of Darby's matches that we love as well. That includes the increased emphasis on fundamentals and mat work throughout the early stretches of the match, and even some surprising gruesomeness in Pac attacking Darby Allin's burns. Just great stuff that gives off the particular vibe that Darby versus the Death Riders always did. It is a smart, clever match buoyed by Darby's continued dedication to destroying his own body. I love it. It's Darby Death, and somehow it's not even the best he did this year. There will be a lot of it later on, but for now, we have the 17th best match of 2025. Number 16 is Kazusada Higuchi versus Shinya Aoki from May 6th, 2025 in DDT. A match is especially great when one of the best moments in it is a man just dragging your head across the canvas and making that a believable finisher. Higuchi versus Aoki is perhaps the best immovable object versus unstoppable force match of the year. Aoki is relentless and always continuous in his attacks and attempts to bring his shoulders to the match, but against a much larger opponent in Higuchi, it is a greater uphill struggle than ever. It is violent, it is so tightly worked between the mat work and Higuchi's striking, and that finish of Higuchi just grabbing on the brain claw and just scraping Aoki's corpse across the canvas. Just one of the best moments in pro wrestling all year, and the kind of creative violence that I think a lot of us in here appreciate. I know I certainly did, and that's why it comes in at number 16. Number 15 is Ultimo Guerrero versus Blue Panther in a rematch for the MLW Championship. And this is just the maestros at their finest. Guerrero versus Panther is primarily a bomb fest. I can admit that about them. But it is as great a bomb fest as you can get from two masters of their craft at this particular stage in their careers and making the absolute most of the magic that is Arena Mexico. Alright? We call it the Cathedral of Lucha Libre, the home of pro wrestling for a reason. And that is because everyone in that building buys in 100% every single time, and it works wonders with two people as well studied and practiced as Ultimo Guerrero and Blue Panther. In this championship match, it is a rematch from their bout earlier in the year, which, spoiler, we will be talking about a little later on, and it delivers on the promises of giving us that feel-good Blue Panther victory after Ultimo Guerrero sort of snuck one by previously in the year. We get those cathartic, wonderful moments of Blue Panther being in awe of his own capabilities still, those great dives that are always matched with such a strong emotion. It is not just the shock that someone of Panther's age is still diving off the ramp and doing sentons off the apron. It is also the grounding emotion that he adds to all of those moments. That feeling of, I'm still here, I can still get it done, and with this, we have the absolute proof. Blue Panther still got it, Ultimo Guerrero, one of the best luchadors in the world, and this, one of the best matches from CMLL in 2025. How do you take a man like Jon Moxley, who was hated both in kayfabe and out for so much of the year, and make him a goddamn folk hero? Here's how. You bump him into the steel steps, you chip his tooth, and you watch him not tap out for the first time in a year. Jon Moxley versus Kyle Fletcher is just one of those magical moments in pro wrestling where it feels like a wrestler at the top of his game is weaving pure brilliance out of almost nothing. Jon Moxley's performance here is astonishing, but first, I gotta give Kyle Fletcher his flowers. Kyle Fletcher in this match is so good and basically delivers on the promises of all those comparisons to a young Randy Orton. Here, he's actually able to bring out that viciousness, that sadism, that allows him to put the pressure on Jon Moxley and make it believable that this crowd and everybody watching at home is rooting for a man who has terrorized the company for a full year. And to that front, Jon Moxley, man. Good lord. What a performance in here. Chipping his tooth, getting the people on his side, being incredibly sympathetic throughout the heat, and also just wildly admirable and gaining our admiration and love once again throughout the comeback. Every single near fall I bit, every single time that Fletcher went back to the leg and locked Moxley back in a submission, I was screaming, don't tap out, don't panic this time, and seeing Moxley just pay off that promise, grit his teeth, and work his way through it to become the hero that a lot of us honestly just wanted him to be. It is one of the greatest moments of pro wrestling in 2025, and it would have landed this match much higher in the list if not for a rather lackluster live crowd. A stronger reaction in the building probably makes this one of the best matches of the year. To an even greater extent, maybe even one of the best of the decade, but you have to ding them here. Still, a great moment. Fletcher being so despicable and Moxley being so wonderful that it feels like the world turns over. And now we have something a little special that I haven't usually done before, and that is a special mention match. Special mention, Kapeka and Sanjuki's brawl from January 15th, SGW Amazon. The reason I am listing this here as a special mention and not an official entry is because it's not a match. But what is a match anyway? If the empty arena confrontation between Terry Funk and Jerry Lawler is a match, maybe this should get its due as well. If the Topelo concession stand brawls in Memphis are a match, then maybe this should get its due as well. But as far as facts go, a bell doesn't ring at the start and a bell doesn't ring in the end. It is just an extended fucking fight between Kapeka and Sanjuki, and it is one of the most visceral experiences you will probably have from pro wrestling in 2025. If you have not seen it, it's available for free on YouTube, as all of SGW's great work is, and it is fantastic. They cut swaths through the fans in attendance like they're Stan Hansen swinging a bull rope. Okay, it is just reckless violence bursting out across this open Ugandan field in a way that I've just never seen before. It is the best thing they've ever done that I've ever seen from SGW. Throwing wild, solid, loud punches, elbow strikes. Hell, even Kapeka's super kicks land with a beautiful, crisp thud in here that you don't often associate with that kind of strike. And the finish? God! Fighting their way into the watery ditch at the edges of the venue. Hard to even call it a venue, it's just an open field like I said before. Kapeka locking in just the tightest guillotine choke you've ever seen, and Sanjuki literally clawing at wet mud as consciousness fades from his body. Ooh, if that isn't great pro wrestling, I truly don't know what is, and it deserves a mention here on the official list, if not an official entry of its own. It would slot in here, so I am sort of cheating the list. It is kind of a top 21 this year, but I couldn't do this list in good faith without mentioning this wild encounter between Kapeika and Sanjuki. What can I say? The chemistry and magic between Omega and Okada just never went away. You can take away a full foot of Kenny Omega's intestines. You can take away a lot of the energy that Kazuchika Okada brings to all his best work in New Japan. You can even take away the devoted Tokyo Dome and Japanese audiences in general. And still, Okada versus Omega is Okada versus Omega, and it is a great match. If anything, it may be their most focused match ever. What we lose in sheer physicality and intensity from their absolute peak in 2017 and 2018, we gain in a greater mindfulness here, with Okada actually making the most of his Don Callis family association and really leaning into being an evil champion heel, attacking Omega's gut and body throughout the match and trying to exploit the weakness that has been keeping him down over the last few years. And Omega, for his part, puts him some of the most thoughtful body selling I've seen from him ever. I know a lot of people are mixed on Omega's particular brand of selling. I thought he did it incredibly well here. I thought it hindered a lot of the action that he was attempting, and he was very clever about always gesturing towards it throughout the match. It still pays off with Okada getting a real nasty, dirty win in the end. I especially like that they don't go overboard with the near falls here in a way that some might have expected and that they may have felt obligated to do. No! Instead, they build it around anticipation, near misses, counters, and when Okada finally hits that Rainmaker flush, we all know that it's game over. 1, 2, 3. Just another display of how well these two work together and how well they've always worked well together, this time on a grand American stage. Great stuff. I love it. One of the best Okada-Omega matches. Honestly, not even their worst. I would take it over some of the 2017 ones. That's my hot take for this particular match. Let's see how that goes over online. Number 12, Mark Briscoe versus Ricochet in a stretcher match from May 25th. Ricochet spent the early part of the year really sharpening and focusing this renewed heel character, infusing his incredibly athletic in-ring style with just classic heel fundamentals. And for that, he must pay. And who better to make that happen than Mark Briscoe, one of the most likable wrestlers on the planet. Mark Briscoe bleeds buckets in this match, as a Briscoe is wont to do. And Ricochet stooges his ass off, whether that's leaping off the top and bumping into the stretcher, or letting a bloody Mark Briscoe play the bongos on his bald, disgusting head. It is so good and a wonderful payoff to the Ricochet character that we saw built up throughout the early part of the year. Mark Briscoe's just a perfect babyface contrast to Ricochet here. Working class, blue collar, bleeding all over the place and trying to get the job done. It is one of the better gimmick matches that we saw from AEW in 2025, and I think it's perhaps the best match we got from Ricochet in one of his best years yet. Number 11, Darby Allin versus Claudio Castagnoli from August 27's Dynamite. Darby Death! It is an unassailable, always hits, never misses genre of pro wrestling, and this is still somehow not the best version of it this year, but my god is it great. Throwing Darby Allin into the ECW arena and telling Claudio Castagnoli to throw him as far as he can. Woo! That's pro wrestling, baby! Oh, this has some of Darby's most insane bumps ever, and really think about the ground that covers. Claudio Castagnoli hauling him all the way over his head and all the way out of the ring into the announce table. Nothing to guard Darby Allin on the fall. No way for him to control the direction of his fall. It's just gravity, wood, and metal when he crashes into the announce desk. It is so great, and there is so much wildness in this match that is suited to the setting. Darby leaping off of the support poles, crashing Claudio through the tables in the finish. This might be one of Darby's better comebacks of the year, although I do think he still suffers when putting together his victories. God, it's just so sick! Sorry to not be intellectual and just dip into a gut reaction, but when you see a man being flung at the rate and speed that Darby does, there is no other reaction than a visceral, violent, reckless, insane show of just pure insanity that marks itself as one of the best TV matches that AEW put on in 2025. Number 10, Necro Butcher versus Judge Joe Dredd from SVN October 4th, 2025. I want to preface this particular entry by saying that if you don't feel comfortable watching the Necro Butcher in 2025, I get it. I totally get it. Especially with how politics are in the US right now, especially with how the Necro Butcher has chosen to use his free time throughout the last few years. I get it. That said, this is about as classic Necro Butcher as you're gonna get in 2025, and it is still so fucking great. Necro Butcher just puts in a powerhouse of a performance in this match. There is a charming bout of chain wrestling at the start that is about as classic pro wrestling as it gets. It doesn't feel perfunctory. It still feels violent and struggle-filled in the way that Necro Butcher always was able to do against traditional non-deathmatch wrestlers. And then, once the violence gets going, Judge Joe Dredd smashes what appears to be a full, non-gimmicked beer bottle right into the Necro Butcher's skull, and it cuts him open in one of the most gruesome non-blade jobs I've seen all year. If you told me that Necro Butcher bladed here, I would be the mark to argue with you that no, the glass just split his face open. It's gross, it's disgusting, and on top of that, Necro Butcher adds to it a performance that is shockingly sympathetic. Just an incredible head injury selling performance here. I want to say selling. He may have just been fucked up because it looks like he's barely on his feet, barely able to fight throughout this match. And when the punches start landing in the comeback, it's like, oh my god, this is the Necro I remember. He's still in there behind the American flag and the MAGA hat. And that's a shame, but it's the truth. For just a brief second, once again in 2025, the world stopped at the end of the Necro Butcher's fist. And I hate to admit it, but it's the experience I had. Blood, a babyface comeback, big old selling, that's pro wrestling. And hey, you might still like it if you don't like the Necro Butcher. You might like seeing him get fucked up and have a beer bottle broken on his head. That might provide you some catharsis. Either way, for me, it's the 10th best match of 2025. Number 9 is Mad Dog Connolly versus Eric Stevens from DPW's 4th anniversary show, December 21, 2025, in an impromptu dog collar match. It is the last night of DPW on American shores, and Mad Dog and Eric Stevens want a goddamn fight. I'll be honest and say that I was incredibly hesitant about this Eric Stevens comeback when it was first announced, especially because his last comeback earlier in the decade was fine for the most part, but with the excellent DPW roster working behind him, and him seeing far more motivated than he has in a long time, Eric Stevens put in one of his best matches ever against Mad Dog Connolly. And think about the ground that covers too when you consider the 2000s and all the super indie super workers that Stevens was able to work with in his time. This match is just insane and real in ways that you're not expecting. It's always odd for me to talk about the real in a predetermined fake sport, but it's the kind of thing that you just know when you see it. And Mad Dog Connolly versus Eric Stevens is the fucking real. And if you doubted me, wait until the bell rings at the end of the match and the camera zooms in on the literal stab wound in Mad Dog Connolly's knee where Eric Stevens jammed a fork into it. He could have worked that spot. He could have put a little air between the fork and the skin. No. Eric Stevens shoved that fork into Mad Dog Connolly's flesh and drew some blood from it. And that is the kind of thing that separates a really good spot in a hardcore match to something that transcends into the real and the true. It's not pantomime. It's not fake. It's just a man inflicting true harm on another for our sick enjoyment. And oh god, if it doesn't work. Outside of the fork work, you have punches, you have stuff with the chain, and even the little fumbles and improvisations in this match make it function really well, in my opinion. I mean, come on, alright? Eric Stevens taking off the dog collar was a necessity for how tangled the collar and chain had become, but it actually works in this setting from a narrative sense, telling us that Stevens was more invested in the win than in proving a point. It went into survival mode, and Stevens did what he had to do. If it was a little underhanded, so be it. But guess who left with the W at the end of the day? Number 8, Mad Dog Connolly versus Dominic Garrini from DPW's Beast Coast, August 23, 2025. This is the best DPW match of the year, and it is exactly what you want from a great Mad Dog Connolly showcase. Hard punches, the chain involved, gruesome blood pouring all over everything. It is not for nothing that Dominic Garrini comes into this match wearing his best Samoa Joe tribute gear. You can tell watching the match that they are doing their send-up to Necro Butcher versus Samoa Joe, and while they never and probably can't reach those truly dizzying heights, the fact that we speak of them in the same breath is perhaps its own compliment. They get so close to achieving being in the same realm as Joe versus Necro, and that is a feat in itself. This is Garini's best performance in a couple of years, maybe since the Brian Keith cage match from Time Bomb Pro a few years ago, and it is by far the most violent Mad Dog Connolly performance of the year as well. It feels completely unhinged in this one, and it demonstrates the sort of trust between Mad Dog and Garrini and the motivation that they had to really put on something special for the DPW audience. This was the place for them to go absolutely crazy, bleed all over the place, and do all the wonderful violence that they clearly love so much. They do wrestle again in places like AIW, and they've wrestled before in Black Label Pro, but this is the Mad Dog Dom match. I don't know if any other indie in the world is ever gonna capture this lightning in a bottle quite like this again. But when you think of these two names and what an ideal bout between them looks like, it's this one from DPW's Beast Coast, the best DPW match of 2025. Number 7, Blue Panther versus Hechicero from CMLL January 10th, 2025. A rematch for one of the best CMLL matches of 2024. Shocker, it was great again. This match benefits a lot from watching it in direct sequence from the first bout in 2024, as you can see the little ways that they've built in Hechicero and Panther adjusting their strategies and learning from the previous matches, bringing in new counters as well. So that means you get a lot of great llave stylings in the first fall, all building up into those beautiful Blue Panther dives towards the end that we've already talked about. It is a grand spectacle, as one would expect from these two, especially in Arena Mexico. Just a lovely display of what Lucha Libre is, can be, and always has been. It is the best Hechicero match of the year, in a year where he dedicated a lot more time working for Con Promotions. This was the true display of his powers and ability against one of his greatest stylistic partners in the last few years, and it is one of the best CMLL matches of the year. but not quite the best yet. That honor instead goes to number 6, Ultimo Guerrero versus Blue Panther from CMLL, August 8th, 2025. Now this is just pure lucha libre, just the buy-in from the fans and the viewers wanting to see Old Man Blue Panther get the job done. He comes into this match wearing the Blue Panther mask. I do believe that he got commission permission to wear the mask throughout this bout. And every time Guerrero goes after it, it is nasty, it is hateful, and you feel that from the crowd. Of course, this does turn into just the classic Blue Panther dives and bomb fest towards the end, which is added by Guerrero having a wonderful arsenal of bombs and big moves of his own. But I do think that this is buoyed by just some classic face-heel dynamics. You want to see Panther get the job done, and Guerrero's meanness and viciousness against Panther here really stands out to make the match sing. You have a bunch of fun little bits in it, like the referee interrupting Panther trying to get revenge despite Guerrero having been punching Panther in the corner all throughout the match already. And it's just a lot of cool stuff like that. The smaller moments building up to all those wild spots towards the end that make it such a rewarding and fulfilling match in Arena Mexico. Just bask in it. Love it. It's about as close as we got to a major Legends Apuesta this year. But the fact that it's for an MLW belt, well, I guess we can thank them for that much at least. Guerrero does steal it here, but thankfully we get the catharsis of the Big Panther victory a little later on, as we discussed earlier. As it is, it's the best match from Mexico in 2025, and it remains one of the best pairings anywhere in the world. Number 5, Jon Moxley versus Hangman Page, July 12, 2025, Texas Death, all in Texas. What else is there to say about this match? A match so good, that it single-handedly convinced a large section of Jon Moxley's haters at the start of the year. A match so good that it convinced us that AEW might become the promotion of the year for 2025. A match so good that within 10 seconds, Hangman Page shoves a fork so deep into Jon Moxley's face that the blood just starts spurting all over him. Ah! I watched this match on stream, and a lot of people were able to see my immediate visceral reactions to this match because the match is visceral and violent in all the best ways. All right, it features just an astonishing Jon Moxley performance. We talk about demonic performances. Wow, Jon Moxley with blood from head to belly, putting the punishment on Hangman Page here, making him earn this victory at every single turn, is some of the finest pro wrestling I've ever seen. Arguably one of the finest performances of Jon Moxley's entire career. The way that his body was able to occupy the space in the ring to look menacing and sadistic throughout the match, and Hangman Page against his career best opponent, once again turning up the dial and bringing in the intensity, hard strikes, and sheer endearing performances, willing to walk through all that punishment to get the job done. He is never as good as he is against Jon Moxley, and Jon Moxley throws the kitchen sink at him to make him feel like a deserving new AEW World Champion. Jon Moxley again puts in the work to make Hangman Page look like the man, and arguably never did it any better than flailing at the end of a chain, seeing his life flash before his eyes, and tapping out like the greatest coward on the face of the earth. Texas Death, Moxley versus Hangman Page. Fantastic. So good that it doesn't even feel too bogged down by all the interferences. Darby Allin fits into place, even though I wish they didn't play that selfie video from Mount Everest and Darby just came down from the rooftop like Sting instead. Bryan Danielson gets his pound of flesh from the Death Riders. by helping neutralize the numbers advantage here. And Hangman Page just gets the job done. Cowboy shit in the truest way that it's ever been for that man's career. I don't think Hangman Page is likely to get to those heights again. We can hope, but it feels like Moxley is the secret ingredient that makes all that work. Number 4, Kazusada Higuchi versus Jun Akiyama from DDT's Wrestle Peter Pan, August 30, 2025. The best Japanese match of the year. I have been somewhat down on the Puroresu scene over the last couple of years, but Kazusada Higuchi's reign as the KOD Openweight Champion was a highlight of the year, and this was his best match. Once again, reigniting the feud with Jun Akiyama. I do believe that this does suffer from Higuchi's reign in general, sort of playing out as a greatest hits kind of reign, not really doing anything new, not breaking new ground. But again, someone who's still as great as the fifth pillar, Jun Akiyama himself, I don't think that's too much of a problem. They hit so hard in this match and infuse it with the classic story that they have used previously. Akiyama tries to neutralize Higuchi's brain claw and his chops by going after the arm. It is some of Akiyama's most focused and vicious arm work in the last decade. I think it looked especially great here. And Higuchi is believable on the cell, being one of the classic wounded giant figures that we still have in pro wrestling today, getting to convey the vulnerability in his weakened limb, but still making those final comebacks where he does rely on his power and his strikes 100% believable. When Higuchi finally gets that brain claw, I think it's quite cathartic and a huge pop from me. Meanwhile, Akiyama gets about as close to making me believe he's gonna get the job done here than he ever has. Akiyama has been somewhat phased down in the DDT main event scene, sure, but here, going after the arm, nailing those big exploders towards the end, a part of me was like, I could work with another Jun Akiyama title reign. That doesn't happen, but what does happen is the fourth best match of 2025. Number 3, Jon Moxley versus Darby Allin in a coffin match. And I might as well talk about it in direct conjunction with Number 2, Jon Moxley versus Darby Allin in an I Quit match from AEW Wrestle Dream. I think it's best that I talk about these two matches together, simply because they feed into each other basically immediately. First, we'll start with the coffin match. Again, just another display of pure sadism on Jon Moxley's part and sheer recklessness from Darby Allin's part. I do believe that this is able to surpass the Texas Death Match because it is a lot tighter than the Texas Death Match. Not only is it shorter, the interferences in the coffin match feel a lot more purposeful, again with Pac delivering one of the grossest Razor's Edge style power bombs, sending Darby sailing over the top rope onto the coffin. Fucking gross, fucking disgusting. And again, Moxley putting in a emotional, sadistic, vicious performance here, beating the shit out of Darby Allin, and also putting in the emotion of seeing Darby Allin endure. An emotional aspect of Moxley's performances that would become much more important later on in the year. I do still love this match. I believe that the way that they utilize the coffin especially is quite strong, bringing it into the ring so that there's not too much time spent on the floor. And the fact that Moxley is able to really make it feel like an unjust win with the Death Riders coming out to help him and locking Darby into the warped and dented coffin by the end of the match makes it one of the best Darby Death matches of the year. But the best one is Moxley versus Darby I Quit Wrestle Dream. Wow! This match has received some criticism online for being literally bloodless. I struggle to really resonate with that criticism because it is spiritually the opposite of that. My God, does Moxley just beat the shit out of Darby Allin in this match, and does it in some truly inventive and gruesome ways. that he brings back the jaw attack on Darby's teeth by basically curb stomping the steel rope into Darby Allin's teeth. He goes after the mouth after that, which Darby sells extremely well, making that a detail that is so often taken for granted in wrestling. Darby makes it feel so alive and visceral. And Moxley is, again, incredibly evil and demonic in this match, taking the singular skewer instead of the spread and driving that into Darby Allin's fingernails. It's hard to watch, even knowing that a lot of it might still be pantomime and worked. It is hard to watch. Then you watch Moxley and Darby take turns with the taser. Getting that timing perfect as they did is really hard. Like, intellectually, you know that the trick is to make it do the sound and take your thumb off before it hits the skin. But if you've ever watched Vader versus Cactus Jack, you know how sometimes that timing can go wrong. Here, they nail it, and it's perfect. There is some stuff here that keeps it from being the #1 match of the year, which is that the timing of the Sting comeback, while incredibly great to see Santa Sting in the ring, does take a little away from Darby Allin's babyface journey. You do sort of wish he had done that on his own, but I get that in practice, it is Sting evening up the numbers so that Darby can get the job done. It's not quite right, and again, Darby does suffer a little from his victories and finishes never being quite as good as his failures and deaths on bumps. But I actually think that the finish to the I Quit has worked even better in hindsight, given just how much Darby has committed to the Scorpion Deathlock as an ultra successful finisher in the meantime. I think the fact that Moxley gives in immediately also works incredibly well in hindsight, given how much emphasis was placed on Moxley's panic and his susceptibility to submit towards the end of the year. Honestly, Mox Darby is a match that I think has only gotten better with time. I think that history will be on its side as people look back on this year and how it fits into both Mox and Darby's development and narratives in 2025, and it is the second best match of the year. I was flirting with it being the best match of the year. For a while, I thought it was the match of the year. But then I went back, I looked at the footage, and a miracle is a miracle. Number 1, Zack Sabre Jr. versus Hiroaki Goto, New Japan Pro Wrestling, The New Beginning in Osaka, February 11th, 2025. There's no denying that there is a personal element as to how I receive this match. I believe that for a lot of people, there is a personal element into how they receive this match. For those that have lost parents, specifically fathers, early in their life, I don't think anything in the year was quite as emotionally driven, moving, and compelling as Hiroaki Goto dedicating his chase for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship to his late father. I've written about this extensively before, but it's just so moving. So moving. All the pieces fit perfectly in this match. It's not just that Hiroaki Goto dedicated it to his late father. It is also the fact that Hiroaki Goto was a punchline. He was the butt of the joke. He was the choker. He was the man who couldn't get it done. For over a decade, Goto chased that title, and he put his pride and his name on the line regularly, and every single time, he was pushed back and turned away, and the timing was never right, and he couldn't get the job done, and he was shamed and humiliated, but then everyone left. Tanahashi's in his last year. Okada has signed with AEW. Will Ospreay's in AEW. Jay White, all of them, gone. And Goto is one of the last threads left to the New Japan that was. The New Japan that made the world interested in that promotion. And this time he had something truly powerful and real to fight for. It doesn't get more real in this world than family, than legacy, and all of that raw emotion gets translated into one of the best IWGP World Heavyweight matches of the entire decade. Zack Sabre Jr. plays his part in this perfectly, never going too far into being the evil foreigner heel, still maintaining a certain sense of decorum, but operating with such pure, cold efficiency that it makes Goto's chances still feel slim and presenting an obstacle worthy of being toppled. Zack is more focused in this match than he truly has been all decade long. He goes right for Goto's arm, he stays on it, and every single cutoff centered around the arm or even wearing down Goto's neck really does land and feels devastating and like the whole world is crashing down upon you. And by that same token, when Goto is able to apply his comebacks and start moving towards that victory, incrementally making progress, laying in those lariats, knocking Zack down. Oh, my God. It's special. At one point when I was first watching the match, Goto lands a lariat so strong and so powerful that I leapt out of my chair and my headphones fell off of my head. And the tension that they're able to maintain all the way into the end of the match, with Goto finally nailing the GTR and not going for the cover. And for a second, I'm there, watching it unfold, panicking, saying, no, don't go to the well too often. He'll counter you, he'll learn, he'll find something. There's such fear in that moment, and instead it works out. And he nails the second one. And the referee counts to 3. And Hiroki Goto wins the world title for all the fatherless sons in the world. For all the underdogs, all the losers and the chokers, proving us wrong and having a glorious, singular, beautiful moment in the sun. It is as close an experience to watching After Sun for the first time as I got in pro wrestling. And for those that know me, that is about the highest compliment I can pay to this match. Goto gets the job done. The G in IWGP stands for Goto. It is a beautiful moment. It brings a tear to the eye. It is pro wrestling done right. Zack Sabre Jr. versus Hiroki Goto. New Japan Pro Wrestling. The new beginning in Osaka. The 2025 match of the year. Input over output. Again, the input over output category is to recognize wrestlers who don't have a case strong enough to be on the final wrestler of the year list, but whose individual performances were so strong that they were worthy of recognition. All right? That means that they don't have enough great matches to be in the top 20 list and not even to make it in the honorable mentions, but they were so good and enjoyable on their own that I had to bring them up regardless. All right? I'm going to kick us off with our first input over output entry for the year, which is Nicole Matthews. A regular of the input over output category at this point, Nicole Matthews' case is anchored by being the best DPW Women's World Champion ever. And she was excellent at it. The closest I felt to seeing Ric Flair replicated in 2025 was watching Nicole Matthews get by the skin of her teeth every single time she had a challenger for the DPW Women's World Championship. Porig in chat saying that she's top 20. I don't hate that particular take, honestly. It's just that Nicole's case suffers from volume. All her case is surrounded around her DPW work. I'm not too plugged into her work on smaller P&W indies, but the work in DPW is so great. The feud with Dani Luna really helped put over the Women's World Championship as being on the level of the world title in the company, and was basically the source of a lot of great matches and tension throughout the year. I wish they had been able to pay it off one last time before the company had to shut its doors, but what can you do? Nicole Matthews, as an in-ring wrestler this year, was able to mix the cowardly heel charm of her Shimmer title reign, but with the sharper, much more polished mat work that has been a marker of her performances this decade. She twists up her opponents into knots, but when they start beating her ass, she's the first to run away, bump, and stooge, and it is a beautiful synthesis of the best of Nicole Matthews' work throughout the years. Her matches against Masha Slamovich were a highlight. The matches against Amira were especially great. I made the comparison that Matthews is like Flair in this title reign. Amira might just be her steamboat. Just an athletic wonderkind who always pushes Matthews to her limit and brings out the most malicious and vicious side of Matthews' action in the ring. Every time Nicole Matthews was on my screen, it was always a highlight. It was always worth watching, and it was always an attraction worth seeing, and that makes her one of the best indie wrestlers of 2025 and someone who I couldn't do this video without mentioning. And because of how great she was, I do also have to mention Dani Luna. Dani Luna might be one of the most versatile wrestlers on the planet today. She seems to excel at most every aspect of in-ring work, at least from a mechanical standpoint. You can take her to the mat and have really interesting chain wrestling exchanges against the likes of Nicole Matthews. You can go toe-to-toe with her and have her drop big bombs like that beautiful second rope deadlift German suplex that she likes to employ. And hell, she can get bloody and crazy as well, as demonstrated in her dog collar matches against the likes of both Hayan and later on Indy Hartwell. Can we process that for a second? I voluntarily switched on Impact Wrestling because Dani Luna bled from her face like a maniac. Alright, and Dani Luna's match against Indy Hartwell and her TNA work in general just goes to show how versatile she is as a whole. In TNA, she wrestles more as a heel, whereas in DPW, she was one of the best ace figures in the company as a babyface. Again, in those matches with Hayan, she was basically holding down the company through that rough first quarter. While DPW was struggling to find their footing with Jake Something out of action, Dani Luna was their top attraction and the wrestler to see in the company. And she never stopped being great throughout the entire year. I wish so badly she had been at the final DPW America show, but it is what it is. And instead, we have her here, and we recognize her as part of the input over output category. We have one more wrestler for input over output, and that has to go to Sanjuki. Kapeka gets the love, Kapeka gets the fame, Kapeka gets the how are you? But I don't think I enjoy watching anyone in SGW wrestle more than Sanjuki. Sanjuki is a Death Rider who doesn't even know it. He is out there doing some truly wild things that are interesting and cool in ways that distinguish him from the SGW house style and his contemporaries within the roster. Sanjuki is one of the few people that regularly brings limb work, specifically arm work, into his matches, and at its best, that arm work really develops into cool stuff against his opponents. At its worst, it does get relinquished and fades out of focus, as is common in other parts of the world, but especially in SGW. But I especially loved his match against Anoa, which made the Matches of the Year list at number 20. I love the brawl with Kapeka, which received a special mention on the Match of the Year list. And I think that Sanjuki is just a huge part of it. He is so vicious in the ring. He's something of a buzzsaw with how hard he hits and how sort of relentless he is when attacking a limb and given that particular avenue of attack. He also is responsible for some of the sicker non-wrestling moments of the year, such as when Kapeka tries to set him on fire, okay? Sanjuki has really cool entrance gear made up of dried leaves that he wears over his body. It's very distinct, stands out not just in SGW, but in the wrestling scene as a whole. And at one point, Kapeka buries him under a pile of dried leaves and sets the pile on fire. And Sanjuki is under that burning pile for way longer than you think. All right. It takes a while for him to bail out and decide he doesn't want to get burned all over his body. But yeah, Sanjuki, great wrestler. My favorite SGW wrestler. I would say the best SGW wrestler on the roster right now. And our last pick here for input over output. The top 20 wrestlers of the year. Honorable mentions include Neon, Defunto, Zandokan Jr., Wheeler Yuta, Shinya Aoki, and Ricochet. And that just leaves us with the list proper, starting off with number 20, Calvin Tankman. True to his name, an absolute heavyweight tank and one of the best wrestlers in DPW throughout 2025. Tankman was a little less of a focus of the company, as in 2024, he did hold the world's title throughout most of the year. In 2025, he was still one of the best parts of the company and a regular highlight of the programming. He has great matches against the likes of LeBron Cozone towards the end of the year. He even has great matches teaming with LeBron Cozone in the middle of the year. Calvin Tankman has also one of the better Adam Priest title defenses in a pairing that works exceedingly well. In fact, I would say that it's Tankman's credibility as a champion and a top draw for DPW that made Adam Priest's victory over him in Las Vegas so devastating when Adam Priest does become the DPW World's Champion for the first time. Tankman is just an incredibly credible, hard-hitting, heavyweight wrestler that makes the most of basically every moment. In fact, towards the end of the year, it's his feud with Manny Lo that adds a lot of credibility to Manny Lo as an act, as a developing mid-carder, undercard worker throughout DPW. Tankman is a great wrestler, had great matches all throughout the year, and was a highlight in DPW, and that's why he kicks off the list. Number 19, Powerhouse Hobbs. It's a career year for Powerhouse Hobbs, as he was able to get more done in 2025 than he has in AEW basically since the days of Team Taz, I would argue. And to his benefit, Powerhouse Hobbs also got to have a heel turn at the end of the year, showing off his versatility in this particular category. Powerhouse Hobbs was a TV highlight in AEW, regularly as part of the Ops, teaming with Samoa Joe and Katsuyori Shibata, but also in singles settings. He has a fantastic singles match against Hangman Page that might actually be one of the better matches of Hangman Page's reign as AEW World Champion. And even before that, he is one of the better early Mox title defenses of the year in the match where he makes Mox bleed from the ear. Powerhouse Hobbs was sort of undeniable in 2025 as he really developed into the best form of himself. Sharp, incredibly charismatic in the ring, a imposing hoss that knew how to use his size and his personality well, whether that be as a babyface or later on as a bully heel. He basically did everything you want from a mid-carder babyface and maximized every opportunity that was given to him. In 2025, he got more than he did before. Shame that retirement followed immediately after this, but hey, them's the breaks. Number 18, Trevor Lee. One of the best heels in the world. Trevor Lee left the WWE in 2024, or was released rather, and hit the ground running with his return to DPW. In 2025, we saw another great synthesis of who Trevor Lee was and who Trevor Lee became, mixing in the real loud and brash, borderline comedic stylings of his WWE TV work and his heel work before that as well in the 2010s with the hero of the Carolinas. Trevor Lee returns to the Carolinas in DPW, but instead of the honorable, imposing champion Ace, he's an evil little shit aligned with the devil himself, Adam Priest, and he makes the most of that combination and the focus that he was able to receive at the top of the card in DPW. He is a great stooge alongside Adam Priest throughout most of the year. He's able to use his singles credibility to elevate a lot of younger talents. He has a great match against Ryan Clancy at Beast Coast, for example, and he's a great part of the main event scene, even just doing his interference runs, helping Adam Priest. The moments where Priest is able to team with Trevor Lee are a great highlight as well. They have a great match to start off the year against Calvin Tankman and Andrew Everett. They are a great tag team at the end of the year, basically dying for all of their sins against Everett and BK Westbrook. The January match again is against Tankman and Westbrook, I believe, not even against Everett. Regardless, Trevor Lee was excellent throughout the entire year. And speaking of Westbrook, helped really elevate him and give us some much needed payoff as far as BK Westbrook's face turn and rise through the company goes. All of that was on the back of Trevor Lee, not to mention the fact that Trevor Lee may be one half of the greatest moment in DPW history when he gets murdered by LeBron Cozone right before the doors close on DPW in America. The selfie that Dustin Waller takes with all the baby faces posing around Trevor Lee's corpse in the middle of the ring is indicative of the great work that Trevor Lee did throughout the year, the great work that DPW did throughout the rest of the year, and it's why he makes it on to the list of the top 20 wrestlers of 2025. Number 17, Hechicero. Quite a bit of a dip from Hechicero in 2025, especially when in 2024 I had him in the top 3, I believe. Unfortunately, Hechicero just does not have as much material to work with in 2025, but is still pretty great when given the opportunity. Of course, we have the match against Blue Panther that made our match of the year list, but also just scattered great TV work alongside the Don Callis family in really great multi-man tag team settings. Hechicero is always a highlight as well. Still also just a regular highlight on CMLL programming when he is around, having great singles matches against the likes of Valiente and Ultimo Guerrero, being a highlight of the Fantastica Mania tour against Barbaro Cavernario, and again having cool matchups in AEW, like when he gets to go up against Orange Cassidy, for example, and teaming against the babyfaces of the Technicos of CMLL towards the end of the year as well. Basically, Hechicero, you know what you're gonna get. He is reliable, stylistically, always stands out in the ring when you do watch him, and it's just a shame that he's devoting more time to a place where he's not quite as much of a focus as his ability really deserves. But still, one of the best in the world. Number 16. Kyle Fletcher. Did anyone improve in 2025 as much as Kyle Fletcher did? I'll tell a funny little story here. Kyle Fletcher has me blocked on Twitter, probably because I said something mean about his ring work before or mean about one of his friends. Whatever it may be, okay, let that speak to how much I have turned around on Kyle Fletcher. That in the past I said something that probably made him block me, and that now I'm a huge fan. Kyle Fletcher was great in 2025, really honing in on classic heel dynamics that just make matches work, all right? I think what Fletcher's great utility is within the AEW roster is his ability to go between those sort of like traditional, let's be honest, hardcore friendly, nerd baity kind of style of heel wrestling, and his ability to do the dumb guy athletic spot fests. He is good at both those things, especially if you're a fan that enjoys both sides of that aspect of his work, and that's why he's seen so much success in this year. I really want to celebrate his much more thoughtful work throughout the year. For example, having a really great match against Hangman Page as part of the Owen. I thought that was one of Hangman's better TV matches of the year. I especially love Kyle Fletcher's match against Moxley, which made the match of the year list. Fletcher's performance in the Continental Classic as a whole is very strong, some of his best work. I thought he was even able to get a really good TV match out of Okada in the Continental Classic, which is actually way more impressive than you would think considering how bleh the Okada versus Takeshita match was. Some of the other highlights of Fletcher's year include stabbing Dustin Rhodes' knee so hard that it takes Dustin Rhodes off of TV. Just great stuff. Fletcher is a highlight of TV this year and someone who went from must skip to must see. And I think that sort of improvement and development is more than worth celebrating. True Colors here reminding me as well of the feud against Mark Briscoe. Run into the ground a little bit, but every time you watch their matches in the bubble, they're all really great. There's an especially great one early in the year on Collision that I think is their best match. Kyle Fletcher, from must skip to must see, the most improved wrestler of 2025. Number 15, Blue Panther. Just an absolute legend in the ring, still delivering these big match moments in CMLL that really can only be rivaled by Mystico himself. Blue Panther is one of the most endearing pro wrestlers anywhere in the world. He gets that across via the great credibility he's built up throughout his legendary career, and also his willingness to still go for it and put his body on the line in ways that are jaw-dropping and spectacular. I am never not wowed by a big Blue Panther dive. I am never not wowed by how much speed he still puts into those topes and the risk that he's willing to take doing those beautiful Frankensteiners off the top or taking powerbomb off the top from Ultimo Guerrero. Blue Panther is so great. Outside of those big-time singles matches that I mentioned earlier, he also has stuff like the really cool Cibernetico from Dean 2 that you can watch on ROH's official YouTube channel, for example. Just an endearing presence that's a great time to watch anytime he shows up, whether that be in Mexico, America, wherever he is. Blue Panther, still one of the greatest. Number 14, Máscara Dorada. Dorada is one of the great beneficiaries of the CMLL Great Match Factory, which is to say that Dorada's case is output over input. I do think Dorada still suffers from that sort of signature sloppiness that takes away from a lot of his best work, but he's also just good enough that he is a highlight when placed in there with wrestlers that can get the most out of him. Typically, that means being slotted in with the Technicos or as part of El Sky Team, who were such a great force in CMLL throughout 2025. Dorada working a CMLL Trios match always hits, and he is always bound to deliver some of the more spectacular aerial and high flyer stylings that you're bound to see in CMLL, especially, even if sometimes he does flub it and there's a little more air on that offense than you would like to see typically. All that aside, Dorada was great. He was a fun presence throughout the Continental Classic. Not always the most consistent one, but he even still had a great match against Jon Moxley in the Continental Classic and some cool bomb fests against Konosuke Takeshita and the rest of his block in that tournament. I like Dorada a bunch, but I do think he benefits way more from the people around him than other people on this list. Still, it is worth celebrating what he does bring to the table, which is a certain reckless, just go for it attitude. He doesn't always nail it, but there's a certain charm to that as well. Number 13, Ultimo Guerrero. Guerrero here suffers from my neglect of CMLL viewing. I do believe he has a much higher shot at the upper reaches of the list if I had seen more material from the middle of the year. But otherwise, Ultimo Guerrero, just one of the most consistent workers of the year. Los Laguneros Guerreros have their trios act down. You can slot them in against the Technicos, and they're always going to put in a great show for everybody, especially at the start of the year as great foils for El Sky Team, really helping establish El Sky Team as this cohesive, exciting babyface unit. No better way to do that than matching them up against Los Laguneros Guerreros, oftentimes anchored by the wonderful performances of Ultimo himself. He also has the great singles matches to hang his hat on in 2025 against Blue Panther, and then later on in the year against Claudio Castagnoli as well. I love Ultimo Guerrero. I wish I had seen more of him. I bet he would succeed more on this list if I did. But for me to craft this list in a way that is both credible and honest, he lands at unlucky 13. Number 12. Daniel Garcia. Talk about someone who benefits from the people around them. I think that Daniel Garcia is probably a stronger wrestler than Dorada overall, but just inclusion in the Death Riders did a lot for Garcia's case. Garcia seems to suffer from being one of those very good wrestlers that often gets lost in the shuffle in AEW, and just having something as simple as teaming with Jon Moxley and co., allowed a lot more focus to be brought to him towards the end of the year, and enough of it that gets him pretty decently placed on this list. Garcia has a lot that we can actually look at, and I think his year is pretty surprising if you are only looking at it on the surface. He has a pretty great TNT title match with Mark Briscoe to start off the year. He has great title defenses against the likes of Lee Moriarty throughout that reign, and even against Kyle Fletcher in one of Fletcher's better early matches of the year. But Garcia's year really turns around as part of the Death Riders. First, the 2-match series against Jon Moxley, which I think brought out the best as far as singles opportunities go for Daniel Garcia, but being a part of the Death Riders means that he's part of all those great Death Riders tag team matches against the likes of the Conglomerate, Roderick Strong, Kyle O'Reilly, a singles match against Darby Allin that was really excellent. Yeah, Garcia's just a part of one of the better acts of the year, and his individual contributions, I believe, are strong enough that he deserves his place on this list. Number 11, Orange Cassidy. I've talked at great length about how great the Death Riders are, but it's a two-way street and their opponents have to be just as great as well, and oftentimes it was Orange Cassidy anchoring the babyface side of things against the Death Riders. I think that Cassidy is a great multi-man wrestler. He slots in so well with such a variety of partners. I love his work teaming with Roderick Strong, but he's also such a great partner for someone like Darby Allin throughout the year, always. And Cassidy had an especially great Continental Classic, having great matches with Claudio Castagnoli, Roderick Strong, even Takeshita. Cassidy even has great matches from earlier in the year against the likes of Roderick Strong and Takeshita, and even Hechicero, which means that Cassidy is quietly always one of the better parts of AEW television. I think we take Cassidy for granted, but when you look at the actual output, the things he's able to do, the matches he's able to have, he continues to prove that in the 2020s, he's one of the best wrestlers in the world and maybe of the decade as well. That's something that's gonna need a lot of consideration when 2030 comes rolling around. Orange Cassidy, you can always rely on him. His gimmick is being lazy, but if you look at the work itself, few people are working harder to make AEW TV as watchable and enjoyable as it is than Orange Cassidy. We're getting into the top 10 now, kicking it off with number 10, LeBron Cozone. LeBron Cozone is the ace of DPW. He may not have held the world title until the very end of the year, but no one bled black and orange more than LeBron Cozone throughout the year. Cozone, another wrestler that I think benefits from being incredibly versatile. We don't really get a lot of heel Cozone. I don't know that I saw a great heel performance or any heel performance from Cozone throughout the year, but he slots in well with so many different kinds of wrestlers, working in so many different kinds of styles. He can do the much more grounded mat work that steadily escalates towards Bombfest. He can do the big moves style matches against opponents that call for that, but otherwise his championship matches have been regularly very grounded, very hard-hitting, and very strong. He has what might be my favorite Luke Jacobs match of the decade from one of the early DPW shows of the year. His continued rivalry with Adam Priest pays dividends in tag team settings and just in backstage segments where Cozone's able to carry himself with such a quiet, cool confidence that I think translates really well for an independent company like DPW. He even has some great top-level highlights. I'm talking about the national title match against Takuya Nomura in Japan, the national title match against Calvin Tankman later in the year, and then, of course, having his crowning moment to close out DPW, finally winning the world title in a great heavyweight babyface versus babyface Hoss fight against Jake Something, and then killing, murdering, destroying Trevor Lee into the fucking dirt to end the company's run. LeBron Cozone is one of the best babyfaces in the world and had one of the best years on the American independents that I've seen in quite a while. We're gonna see a few more of that later on in the list, but Cozone is a must-watch talent, and he finally broke out into the talent he always was meant to be, and I do believe that DPW always hoped he could be. 2025 was about paying off the promises of Cozone's 2024, and he did that in spades. Number 9, Roderick Strong. You want to talk about consistency? You want to talk about input and output? Roderick Strong is your guy. Man, he is something of a utility player within AEW, but goddamn if that utility isn't just having some of the sickest matches possible. All right, we have great matches against the Death Riders throughout the year. There is some of that internal conflict in the conglomeration against the likes of Orange Cassidy. That does mean that Roderick is able to flex his ability to go from pure babyface to somewhat of a more bullyish role, especially when he's wrestling against Orange Cassidy. He has great matches against Jon Moxley in various settings, both singles and tag, and he even has that wonderful return to the independents with his incredible match against Eric Stevens from DPW Super Battle. Highly recommend checking that one out. I think it's actually Roderick Strong's best match of the year, but you're sort of spoiled for choice on that front because there's also a great performance from Roderick Strong all throughout the Continental Classic as one of the highlights of that tournament, where he's basically able to go out and have great matches night after night after night. Roderick Strong benefits from being a cog in the machine, but goddamn if it isn't one of the more efficient parts of the mechanism as far as AEW's week-to-week presence goes. Number 8, Hangman Page. I'm still not quite as high on Hangman Page as some of his biggest fans. I have seen a lot of talk about Hangman Page being flat out the wrestler of the year, and I just can't get all the way there. I do want to start with the negatives first. I do think that Hangman Page is one of the greater victims of the AEW main event style. I do believe that he can get carried away, which means that I didn't check in for his title match against Kyle Fletcher, despite their TV tournament match being really great. And Hangman Page's best matches in his title reign ended up coming against Samoa Joe, who feels immune to the AEW main event sickness. But the work is the work, and some of Hangman's best work does still come in 2025. We've already talked extensively about the Texas Death Match, which is his crowning glory, potentially in his entire career, but certainly for the year of 2025. But Hangman Page also has great TV bouts in tag settings. I especially liked him in Arena Mexico, where he really shined as an overall performer, with that opening promo in Spanish, speaking to the Mexican fans, and then later on in a really great TV main event tag as the babyface anchor against the Death Riders in Arena Mexico. Again, I think Hangman Page's overall year gets hurt by becoming world champion. It is a bit of a curse that Hangman's title reigns never quite shape out as well as they should. But even within that reign, we have great matches such as a Lee Moriarty TV match, the rematch against Jon Moxley, demonstrating Hangman's versatility both in gimmick matches and in plain singles opportunities, which you can say the same of in his feud with Samoa Joe, having a really good singles match to kick off the feud, and then the great performance from Hangman Page in the steel cage match. It is a bit of a dour end to Hangman Page's year, getting roped back into the MJF universe, but otherwise, still strong enough, doing good enough numbers to make his way into the top 10 for the year at number 8. Number 7, Darby Allin. If you have Darby Allin number 1, you are sort of crazy and also sort of correct. Darby Allin might have the best hits ratio as far as great matches had and matches wrestled to anyone on the list. Of course, Darby Allin spends most of the year climbing a fucking mountain and recovering from the effort of that. But once he gets back onto TV, he is unstoppable. I'm talking the Jon Moxley pay-per-view matches, of course, but just random TV bouts where he's able to do so much against the likes of Gabe Kidd towards the end of the year, having some of the best Gabe Kidd matches of the year. Of course, the wrapping up the feud with Claudio Castagnoli, starting a new feud with Pac. Basically everything Darby did against the Death Riders was really great. Having one of Daniel Garcia's better singles matches of the year as well. Darby Allin having one of the best mixed tag matches, teaming with Chris Statlander against Wheeler Yuta and Marina Shafir. Even in smaller settings, we have Darby Allin having great matches at an independent art exhibit, for example, when he teams with Brody King against Timothy Thatcher and Darby Allin's trainee, Kieran Gray. That match is great. A lot of it just due to how brilliantly Darby Allin is able to utilize pro wrestling fundamentals. I think this art exhibit match is actually one of the keys to his year in terms of demonstrating what he can do when he's not trying to set himself on fire or bump from the highest point in the ring He's just doing simple tag team psychology and doing it excellently and better than most any other wrestler in the world. My God, even his match against Kevin Knight in the Continental Classic basically helped kick off the sort of greater interest that our fandom and AEW as a promotion have had in Kevin Knight as a whole. So Darby Allin remains one of the best wrestlers in the world. If he had stuck around for the entire year instead of going up on Everest, there's a non-zero chance that he would have actually been best in the world 2 years in a row. The fact that he's top 10 with only half a year of material, that's how good Darby is, y'all. That's how good he is. Number 6, Mark Briscoe. Mark Briscoe might be the best TV wrestler of the year. Mark Briscoe doesn't get a lot of main event focus in AEW, but the things he is able to do on TV and sort of around that upper mid-card level in the company is great. This is the most that Mark Briscoe has felt like a Mick Foley figure, being a rough and tumble brawler, showcasing his endearing babyface nature, and having great matches against a variety of opponents. Again, on the matches of the year list, we had the stretcher match against Ricochet, but that wasn't the only great Ricochet match that Mark Briscoe had. He had great matches against Daniel Garcia on TV. Anytime that Mark Briscoe was involved against the Death Riders, that was also wonderful. The extended rivalry against Kyle Fletcher should be looked at as some of Mark Briscoe's most important work of the year, as I believe Briscoe was the one who was able to really impart a real sense of credibility for Fletcher's continued rise in stardom throughout the company. And Mark Briscoe was just a reliable hand at every single turn. You could slot him into a multi-man, you could have him in singles matches, and he would always deliver every single time. Hell, Mark Briscoe has one of my favorite MJF matches of the year with the Thumbtacks match at All Out. I actually think that being against Briscoe brought out one of the better MJF performances of the year, and that is not nothing, especially if you're as mixed and critical of MJF's work as I am. Just in general, Mark Briscoe, great wrestler, always a highlight on TV, man up, 2 straight, God bless him. And now we enter the top 5. Number 5. Claudio Castagnoli. Oh my God, talk about a picture of consistency and greatness. It's Claudio Castagnoli. Claudio is maybe the second best worker in the Death Riders, and think about how much ground that covers, given how talented the Death Riders are as a whole. Claudio is the anchor, the enforcer, the one who always seems to just get it, how to really ground these matches in a feeling of violence and oppressive force against the babyfaces in AEW. And again, Claudio was able to do a lot this year actually outside of just that. Even within AEW, he has so much great work. His performances in the Continental Classic, again, really elevate his case for this year, as he was able to show off so much against Dorada, Takeshita, even going up against Jon Moxley in a really great TV match. But I think what really makes Claudio's work in 2025 sing is his excursions to CMLL, where it just feels like he fits in like a glove. And one of the benefits of doing this year-end video so late is that we know that Claudio has officially signed a dual contract with CMLL. And I do think that is off the back of how great he was throughout 2025 and into the new year. He has great matches against Gran Guerrero. When was the last time you saw a great Gran Guerrero singles match? I thought he was excellent against Gran Guerrero in that singles match, and then after that against Ultimo Guerrero as well. Claudio was just a welcome presence everywhere he went. The fact that he became such a center of focus both in AEW and CMLL speaks to the level of talent that he was able to achieve and demonstrate. Still one of the best workers in the world. Death Riders for life. God bless you, Claudio Castagnoli. Number 4. Mad Dog Connolly. Mad Dog is missing a gem for the year that could have maybe sent him into number 1 contention. If we had had something on the level of the Demus Dog Collar match from 2024, we might be looking at Mad Dog a little higher on this list and perhaps at the very top of the list. But even then, we still have a great collection of fantastic Mad Dog matches throughout 2025. He did a little less of the one called Manders matches in 2025, but that means that he was able to explore other pairings much more. For example, the matches against Matt Tremont, both in JCW and DPW, were really, really great. Mad Dog also excelled against the likes of Dominic Guarini and Eric Stevens in DPW, as we've already covered in the Matches of the Year list. And it's Mad Dog's real commitment to the violence and the physical nature of pro wrestling that really elevates a lot of the better workers that he is able to go against. I do believe that Mad Dog does suffer when he is placed against a lesser opponent. Mad Dog is something of a sink or swim wrestler, and when you sink against Mad Dog, it tends to drag him down more than it does his opponent. And that is a significant reason why he's not higher on the list. But even just looking at the stuff he was able to do, getting great matches out of somewhat surprising opponents. For example, Tommy Davis in St. Louis Anarchy. I don't know Tommy Davis's work that well, but he had a great match in April against Mad Dog. Mad Dog also had a fun, bloodless, but making the most of it, dog collar match against Amira at WrestleMania weekend. Shout out to Parm in Dusk Pro. A lesser but still great dog collar match against Demus at Dean. Mad Dog Connolly is the embodiment of an attraction in pro wrestling. You have to see what it is he's going to do, what he's going to bring to every match. He is always so unpredictable, which makes his matches at their worst inconsistent, at their best visceral, raw, and transcendent in a way that few other wrestlers in the world are today. Violent, hard-hitting, he's sort of what we want out of an independent wrestler in 2025. Mad Dog Connolly, the fourth best wrestler in the world today, and rapidly climbing the ranks as one of the best wrestlers of the decade. Number 3. Mystico. If you have Mystico number 1, boy, do I get it. I mean, I don't know that anyone was doing the numbers that Mystico was getting in 2025. Just week after week. Week after week after week after week. Great matches, great matches, great matches. Has a company in the 2020s been so successfully centered on a single wrestler as CMLL has by putting all their money behind Mystico? I think that Mystico has been the most rewarding single ace anywhere in the world this decade as far as matches produced, money made, houses drawn. Okay, Mystico is a superstar in every sense of the world. Must see, someone you go out of your way to watch. In person, live, on film, you gotta love Mystico. Mystico is the anchor that makes CMLL so great still, week on week on week, and he does it in all the settings that CMLL requires of him. Most of the time, it's in the trio setting, and Mystico is one part of one of the best trios in the world in El Sky Team. Other times, it is in single setting, and my god, is there few better big match wrestlers in the world than Mystico. I thought his singles match against Soberano Jr. in Arena Mexico towards the end of the year was stunning. One of the best singles matches in CMLL, probably of the decade. He excels outside of those contexts as well. When Arena Mexico draws in a more hardcore audience, they tend to turn on Mystico, and Mystico's not shy to lean into a more cheeky, rudo-leaning aspect of his character without ever going all the way there. I think he's incredibly clever about how he balances that aspect of his character, being both mischievous and incredibly likable as just this heroic, mythic figure. And on top of all that, his crowning achievement, just a stunning, I would argue, career performance from Mystico against MJF in the 92nd anniversary show of Mystico. I mean, talk about just making the most out of a situation. I'm sure a lot of us here in chat are very mixed or just outwardly negative about MJF. I feel like I lean more mixed than outwardly negative these days. But wow, talk about getting the most out of an MJF singles matches. Mystico bleeds all over the canvas. He is slipping on his own blood. It is an astonishing blood-selling performance from Mystico. Something that I've never really seen from Mystico. Something that he's never really been able to explore as a technico. If you look at Mystico's earlier work in his career, sometimes there's blood, sure, but never to the degree that he spilt it against MJF and how much he committed to that match as well. If Mystico had been against a stronger opponent or even a stronger just MJF performance in that match, that could have easily made my personal top 20 of the year, as it did for many others in the world. throughout the year. But yeah, Mystico, just a stone cold hero of pro wrestling, gets the best out of every single moment. Maybe the best formula wrestler in the world. Like, you can tell me Mystico's singles matches are formulaic. You can tell me the trios matches are formulaic. I eat it up every single time. Mystico is that great, and anybody who ignores his impact on pro wrestling globally and for the year is wildly ignorant of what a force of pro wrestling is making itself known in Arena Mexico every single week. Number 2, Adam Priest. Several people online were predicting that I would have Adam Priest in input over output. What are you talking about? Respectfully, I love y'all. Thank you so much for engaging in good faith with my work. But what the fuck are you talking about? The output is there, my friends. Wow. Adam Priest was amazing in 2025. I hesitate to call it his career year because I do believe he peaked a little higher in other places, but I don't think there's a much better case for an indie wrestler of the year than Adam Priest. He had what I would call the best title reign of 2025 in the world, regardless, with his DPW World's title reign. Just incredibly consistently great matches that beautifully combine the classical Southern face-heel dynamics that we love a lot with a more modern indie sensibility. I don't think Priest ever goes too far on as far as the indie stuff goes. Sure, we'll get a near fall here and there, but few wrestlers in the world are as deliberate, purposeful, and clever about match structure and match execution than Adam Priest. I don't think I saw a single bad Adam Priest performance or bad Adam Priest match all year. And again, a lot of that is centered on his DPW World title reign, the Ultimate Conflict match where he wins the title, the defenses against Tankman, and multiple matches against Jake something, specifically, in case someone here thought I forgot the wrestler's name, are all great. And I think that Adam Priest being able to have this kind of title reign at this level is actually what his decade has been missing, because we've seen Priest put in these performances, put in this kind of work, have these matches, but I do think it is different that he was able to do it at the main event level with a world title on his shoulder and be the full center of a promotion. Yes, we have the Action title reign. Guess what? He was a babyface in those Action title reigns. Yes, we have the Uncharted Territory run from that same year. Guess what? No championships involved. But Southern heel, coward, dipshit, chicken shit, worst in the world, Adam Priest in DPW was a sight to behold. Just an absolute force of nature. Just great every single time. Teaming with Trevor Lee, teaming with Manny Lowe, just awesome. Unsentimental, egoless performances at every turn, letting himself be squashed to end the year. Just a bone-deep understanding of pro wrestling and pro wrestling dynamics. Just one of the few people in the world who just gets how and why it works and translating that into what he puts onto the screen. And guess what? We have a versatility case as well, because Adam Priest plays babyface in AEW and ROH and is great in those roles as well. Has a very good TV match against Bandito, has good TV matches against FTR. If Adam Priest was your wrestler of the year, believe me when I say I was almost there. For a lot longer than some of you think, I was almost there with Adam Priest as wrestler of the year. It's so close. It is so close. And even now, just speaking about it, a part of me is like, maybe he is, because I don't think anyone was as unassailably consistent and delivering great matches every single fucking time against every single fucking opponent than Adam Priest was in 2025. So close, but so far, because 2025 just had one more person to get to. Number 1, Jon Moxley. I feel like I've spent the year shouting this case at people on Twitter and Blue Sky and my website, and I can imagine that it might even be a little tedious and annoying to some people, repetitive, redundant. One last time, Let's lay it out. Jon Moxley is the best wrestler in the world because when I watch Jon Moxley wrestle at the level that he was wrestling in 2025, when I watch him on TV and on pay-per-view, I think to myself in my head and I say it out loud, wow, that's the best wrestler in the world. Jon Moxley's year was astonishing. Just a beautiful case study of patience, commitment, and how far that will take you. People turned on Mox shockingly fast at the start of the year. Shockingly fast. Because he was great at the end of 2024. Some of you don't remember it. He made the Wrestler of the Year list in 2024, despite having a lesser year then also. Going into 2025, the turn on Jon Moxley was so rapid and so shocking to me. But even then, I could still understand it, okay? I want to stand here and say, I understand the criticisms, okay? Mox's first quarter of the year doesn't have a lot of super great high-end output that we can really point to. Yes, there's the Powerhouse Hobbs match. Yes, there is even that FTR street fight that nobody talks about, but is really great. But it is dragged down by how much people dislike the matches against Adam Copeland, how much people dislike the match against Swerve Strickland, which is, can I be honest, odd to me, given how much people like Swerve Strickland in that fandom, and how much I didn't think that match was that bad. And if I'm being honest, Jon Moxley was the better part of that match anyway. Jon Moxley was the one adding the pressure, grounding Swerve down, genuinely getting heat from the people in the audience. I know that there are reports of people walking out of Jon Moxley versus Swerve Strickland at that pay-per-view, but listen to the people who stay. They're buying in, okay? When Mox goes to the eyes, when he works over the cut, people are buying in on Jon Moxley. And then things start to turn. Dropping the trios titles is so great. And we see the first example of the panic in Mox's eyes when he taps out to Samoa Joe. The cage match, while a little lesser than the trios title win against Samoa Joe, also pretty great. Then the Death Riders tags start coming together the way they were always meant to anyway to begin with. In Arena Mexico, in the Dynamite Go Home show to All in Texas. And then Texas Death. Ah! Texas Death, and then even his strongest haters could not deny that they were watching one of the best wrestlers in the world. The best wrestler in the world. Hangman taps a fucking spigot in Mox's forehead, and Mox transforms into a horror movie monster that leads us into the fairy tale ending. And from there, it's off to the races, dude. The Hangman rematch. The Mike Bailey TV match that a lot of people might have forgotten, but was great primarily because of Mox's arm-selling performance. How much Mox was able to get out of Kyle O'Reilly. Was there ever a great Kyle O'Reilly match? I would say not, but Mox was great in all of them. Panicking and causing the DQ against Kyle O'Reilly, carving up Kyle O'Reilly with the fork in the No Holds Barred match, panicking and tapping out again at Blood and Guts. And then if there was ever any doubt about who the Wrestler of the Year was, Continental Classic, turning the whole world upside down and making himself a hero again. On the mic, in the ring, we outrun who we were yesterday. Front runners. If Moxley didn't have the Continental Classic run, maybe Adam Priest is the best wrestler in the world of 2025. But what Moxley was able to achieve with the Continental Classic run was to pay off one of the best year-long in-ring character stories we've seen in wrestling. On the level of Eddie Kingston overcoming his demons in 2023. Jon Moxley does the same. He overcomes the panic. He overcomes his own greed. He overcomes his own selfishness. He outruns who he was to become the ace we all knew he was to begin with. He hid the world title in his briefcase. He held the Continental title high up over his head. He was gracious to his opponents. He thanked his contemporaries. And it was the bow on top of one of the best in-ring years we've seen this decade. Jon Moxley, in 2025, became one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. I believe that will reflect when I rank the 100 greatest wrestlers ever. And there's just no taking away this year from him. He is so good, he turned the haters. He's so good, he had to turn babyface. Because it was that admirable. Jon Moxley, dude. The fact that he ranked as high on the Voices of Wrestling list, when Moxley doesn't wrestle the Voices of Wrestling preferred style, Jon Moxley, ace of the world, ace of the universe, Death Rider, the best wrestler of 2025. Thank you everybody so much for your continued support, and of course right now for all the patience for getting this video out. I'm so sorry that it was late, but here it is finally completed for you all. Of course, I want to send a massive thank you to my editors, my lovely partner Ica de Leon, and the ever-talented SamTheVAMod for helping put this together. And of course, a huge thank you to all of my supporters over on Ko-fi. Thank you to regular supporters such as Woodstove, Riri, Orphan Star, Dan Vasura, OK Awesome, Alex Fireheart, Elsha, The King's Heavenly Road, Portable Stove, CJ, Nicholas Anderson, Marlo, Can Asian Mamba, Chosen One, Citic Eye, Baz, Angel Grapaholics, Ryan Husted, Nick, Zeke, Ben, Blatantly White, Eamon, Sprite, Ryan, Robert, Zach, Andrew, Penn, Joey Hickman, Sam Glasper, Spencer, and Armani. You guys are so great. And of course, a massive, massive thank you to all of my monthly Ko-fi supporters such as James Draper, Captain Jack Heartless, Eddie Roberts, Jacob Dickens, Chick Fritz, Spiders in My Bed, Timothy R. Buchner, Kid Kingpin, Joe Humphreys, Christopher Jackson, Four Pillars of Hell, Sean Emily, Merch Table Mafia, Ando Commando, Vibe MD, Christoph, Quentin Besnahar, Dom G, Austin Shermer, Wrestling Playlist, woo! Secret Cow 42, and Matt Wasung. You guys are absolutely awesome. Don't forget that if you want to see continued thoughts from me on pro wrestling, the most regular place you're gonna get it is over on Twitter at Joseph Weirdness, and mostly weekly, sometimes we miss one, streams over on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Joseph Weirdness. That's also where this video originally happened. Let me know how you feel about the new format down in the comments below. Otherwise, you guys are great. You guys are deeply appreciated. Thanks for sticking with me after all this time. Thank you, and have a good one.